Hey, good afternoon, guys. Men. But, a couple of comments that I received talking to some of the guys here. Yeah, I remember back in the glory days of the Cowboys, the good old days, and I asked one gentleman, I said, you getting sick of saying that? We're getting too used to also saying, well, maybe this year. Well, hopefully this year. But, that's one thing that having played for the Cowboys, as a player, and then also having been now as a fan, I've seen both sides of the fence. Cowboys are truly probably the most polarizing teams in the NFL. Either you love them or you hate them. I had an experience a couple years ago. I was asked by the Cowboys to represent them for the 2012 NFL Draft in New York City, Radio City Music Hall. You probably all watched it on TV, on ESPN or on the NFL Network, where Roger Goodell would get up and he'd announce, the number one draft selection. Well, they started a program a few years ago where they'd ask one of the 32 NFL alumni to represent their team to announce their second round draft selection. I said, man, that's pretty cool. It'd be a great honor. They fly you out. On that Friday evening when Goodell gets up to announce the first round draft selections, we're all at a corporate kind of sponsorship deal, a little grip and grin with some of the corporate sponsors that the NFL has. And it finally came time for the Cowboys when we turned to see who they were going to pick in their first round draft selection. And Goodell just gets up. Now remember, this is in New York City, Radio City Music Hall, downtown Manhattan. The predominance of the fans there are Redskin fans, Giant fans, and those perpetually off the wall. I'm going to even say it here in church, satanic Philadelphia Eagle fans, right? Goodell gets up and he just mentions Dallas Cowboys. Man, the whole place just erupted. Boo, 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 Cowboys suck. And I'm watching this thinking, man, if he got that just for saying Cowboys, and they ended up deferring, they traded down that year, just by saying Cowboys, what type of reception was I going to get the following evening? So I was a little nervous and apprehensive. So finally came time for my turn, and I'm standing off stage right. They hand you a little 3x5 index card, and at the last minute, depends upon who the Cowboys pick, they'll write the name in. So you got to, you're supposed to read it, memorize it. But anyway, I'm sitting there looking at it, but I'm more thinking about what type of reception am I going to get when they announced. Finally came time, they said, please welcome to the podium, 3-time Super Bowl champion, former defensive lineman. I'm going out anticipating the boo-boos. But they also added Gulf War veteran, Air Force Academy grad, former A-10 pilot, and I come out and I receive a polite golf clap. Because even Cowboy haters can't boo a veteran, right? There's more, guys. Now, having been on the other side of the fence as a fan now, you like to kind of play a little bit with the other opposing team fans. So I took the podium and I said, okay, for the 82nd pick of the 2012 draft, pause. Peruse audience. Stare at them for a little bit. I said, America's team. The Dallas Cowboys, like those Tyrone Crawford, walk off the stage, everybody goes, boo, Hennings, you suck! I'm like, thank you. But those different things that I was able to do, as Mark alluded to a little bit before, having flown jets as a veteran, and having been a professional athlete as the Dallas Cowboys, they've been a part of, I guess some people would say, my identity. And that's what I really want to chat about today. We as men at times, just flat out saying the theme of our identity is basically a lot of times built around what we do. But who we are is not what we do, right? What we do is not who we are. What we do is not who we are. That does not define us as individuals. Several years ago, when I retired from the Cowboys, I asked myself a simple question as to why. Why did I do what I did? Why did I take the path in life that I did? Up until that point, I had a lot of success at doing different things. In high school, I was an all-star student athlete. At the Air Force Academy, I was a 2-time academic All-American, unanimous All-American, led the nation in sacks, Outland Trophy winner, MVP of 2 different bowl games. I was a combat veteran, fighter pilot, 45 missions into northern Iraq. I was a 3-time Super Bowl champ with the Dallas Cowboys. But it was a major trial in my life with the health of my son that made me realize a lot of those things that I had accomplished were just that. They were things. Guys, I was really struggling with, okay, what is this all about? See, the priorities that I started my adult life pursuing, the things that our culture teaches us, that to be a man, it's all about health, wealth, prosperity, who you know, how much money you make, and what do you do for a living. But I knew that wasn't lasting, because I had been there, I had done a lot of different things. And a lot of my quote unquote, my identity was built around the aspect of performance. But I knew that I could never truly, because once you achieve something, you always want more. What was that foundational philosophy or that belief system, that filter that I could pass all my thoughts, my words, my actions through that would provide that meaning? It was during this time that I read a book by a gentleman named Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. For those of you who have read it, I see some of you who have read it who go, yeah, you understand. But in this book, Frankl was, his background was a Jewish Austrian psychiatrist who survived and spent time in one of the most horrific conditions that any human being could experience, that being survived Auschwitz, a concentration camp. This is a guy who had everything taken from him. Everything was stripped. Of course, all his material possessions, his family, his wife, his parents were all murdered in the camp. He was left to the bare essence of what it means to be human, and that's to survive. But he made several observations in the camp as to why some people lived and others died. And he made a determination, and he said that one of the main reasons why those that lived was because they had a purpose or a meaning to live for. You know, their identity, their mission, their purpose was all wrapped around either a belief system, a religious belief, your Christian faith, your Jewish faith, something that kept you going. Could have been for someone else, a spouse, a child, a grandchild, a friend. It could have been something as an emotion, anger, hatred, or love. Bottom line, it was something that caused that person to live outside themselves. Then on the flip side of that, he saw and he determined that one of the reasons why those people that died, many times they lived in not as stressful of conditions. They had better food, better working conditions, etc. But he determined one of the main reasons why they died was because they lost their why, their purpose, their identity, their mission. It goes along with what the philosopher Nietzsche says, that he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. He who has a why to live for, a purpose, an identity, a mission to live for, and you can bear almost any how. And you talk about, I played football for 19 years. I've been hit in the head a few times. But that light bulb finally just went on. Or maybe it's just because I'm a guy, I don't know. What was my why? What was my purpose? Not just for me as an individual, but also corporately. In regards to my relationships as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a businessman, as a member of my community, state of Texas, the United States. Because for me, I'll talk about personal identity first and foremost, share a little bit about my story. My identity was wrapped around the aspect of performance. I grew up on a farm in Iowa, farm boy. I learned from my father, my grandfather, the great American work ethic, which is great. I'm not discounting that one bit. We all get out, work hard, achieve goals, set goals, all that sort of stuff. But I approach my faith in much the same manner. For me, it was a matter of performance because I viewed my relationship with my Heavenly Father as one on performance, almost like being a stepchild, not as a true son of the living God. It was based on performance, that if I kind of viewed it as an earthly father at some times, that if I did something, I'm going to be punished. Yeah, we're all held accountable for our sins, but it was based upon my ability to perform was how I viewed God viewed me. If I was in church on Sunday, mission accomplished, fill the square. If I did something wrong, God, I had to make it up to you. I got to work, I got to do something else. I got to do another work, whatever that might be. And that's how I viewed my walk with the Lord. And for me though, my ability to perform, initially on the athletic field, is where those lessons, in life, I wasn't able to segment it because I achieved success in the athletic field. For example, in high school, growing up in Iowa, one of the major sports there is wrestling. I wrestled. I was actually a better wrestler than I was football player. We remember going through freshman year in high school, I had to cut a few pounds. I ended up wrestling on the junior varsity at 138 pounds. That's from here on down. Yeah, but, I had to cut weight. And I just, as a young man, a freshman, or 14 years old, whatever, I didn't want, to put forth that extra, that work ethic just wasn't quite there just yet. So the next year, my sophomore year, I went out for the other winter sport, basketball. Jacoby, you see that? But I never played like this. My game was like, tackle somebody, cross-face somebody, and I'd fall out of every game. So I soon realized that basketball's not necessarily my sport. So I went out for wrestling again my junior year, and I set the goal that I wanted to go to state. Wrestled now at 185 pounds. I make it to the state tournament. I was right on track. I only had like one loss up until this point in time. But I get out there. It's in Veterans Auditorium, downtown Des Moines. 12,000 people, 8 different mats out on a big auditorium floor. I came from a small country town. I had about 125 kids in my graduating class, and I'm looking around going, oh my goodness. I don't deserve to be here. What the heck am I doing here? Take off my sweats, shake my coach's hand, kind of walk out in the middle of the ring, or middle of the mat, shake the opponent's hand, referee blows a whistle. 6 minutes later, I lost when I should have won. And I'm walking off the mat dejected, and I said, you know what? I'm never going to allow that to ever happen again. I'm going to outwork everybody. I'm going to establish a deeper work ethic. It's never going to happen. I'm never going to allow myself defeated mentally or physically ever again. And guys, next year, all through football season, and again, all through, approaching wrestling season, I lived, I breathed, I slept wrestling. I was focused. I was a man on a mission. And I got out there, senior year, man, I smoked through everybody. I beat everybody by at least 8 points, or I pinned them. Got to the state tournament, pinned my first 2 guys, semifinal match. The other guy was kind of what we call fishing out. He didn't want to do anything. I got met, cross face him, gave him a bloody nose, penalty point. That was the only point scored against me. Went to the finals. I won. And I can remember standing on that metal platform, bending down, my coach putting that gold medal around my neck. I said, this is how it's done, guy. This is it. It's all about work. Get after it. Work, work, work. And I share that story with you to set a tone. I've been able to do and accomplish a lot of things in life, but my walk with the Lord was based on that same attitude of performance. I'm going to roll ahead. A few years later, I'm at the Air Force Academy. Similar experiences kept reinforcing that, playing football. My sophomore year, we played a small school, southeast of here, in the 1985 Blue Bonnet Bowl. We beat the, come on, can I get any whoop whoop from any Aggies here? We beat the Longhorns. We spanked the Longhorns in that game. That's not bad for a small school of 4,000 kids in the Front Range of the Rockies. But we're having success and achievement because of the work ethic. We'll roll ahead again. 4 years later, I find myself at the controls of an A-10 Warthog. How many of you guys know what an A-10 Warthog is? Great West Texas. I love most people, I ask that and they just... the coolest thing about the A-10 was that the whole plane was designed around that 30mm Gatling gun called the Gowrie Avenger, depleted uranium tip, high explosive incendiary bullets, 4,000 rounds a minute. Squeeze the trigger for a second. I just didn't pass gas. That was actually my sound of the bullet coming out. It's a great barbecue, by the way, but that's over 100 rounds of depleted uranium coming out where you can, cap a tank from over 15,000 feet away, 3 miles away, and penetrate 2.5 inches of armor with just a gun. I'd like to be deer hunting with that, right? It'd be fun, but there wouldn't be meat left. But I find myself at the controls of an A-10. And all those things, as we as humans, what made us success in the past, we continue to repeat those same habits. So I would, fly my missions, work out, have a good time, but I'd be on chapel services on Sunday at the chapel. And in Turkey is still, even though back then it was a secular society, but it's still very much predominantly an Islamic, Muslim society. And we'd have Turkish nationals that were Christians that worked on base, had access to the base, would come on base to worship at these chapel services. And you'd strike up conversations and talk with some of these folks, and you'd hear their stories about their the body of Christ, other Turkish nationals being, beaten for their faith because of being a, professed Christian. Similar to the story that Steve talked about, Virginia Prodan, in my book, Forces of Character. You hear stories of Christians being beaten, of even being martyred, killed for their faith. And man, that's something that, it's one thing to see that, well, we didn't have Fox News back then, but to see that on CNN, you guys all watched it, to see it on television, but to actually see somebody, touch somebody, feel somebody that's been persecuted for their faith, that didn't set well. So I go back to what it is that made me who I was to that point, performance. That I realized I was taking my faith for granted. You know what? I wasn't working hard enough at my faith. So I rotate back to England after my first 3-month deployment. My wife and I, Tammy, sit down, honey, we got to work harder at our faith. We got to, it's performance. Go to church on Sunday, we go to do chapel on Wednesday. There's that chaplain that's been after us to do that couple's Bible study. Let's get plugged in. Let's do a daily devotional together. You know what? Let's pray together. Sounds great, right? That's what we continue to do. Well, life continued to roll. We were blessed. Our military went through a reduction in force. Myself, along with hundreds, if not thousands of other guys, were able to get out of their commitments and go do something else. So I was able to go play for the Dallas Cowboys. 3 of my first 4 years in the league, Super Bowl championship victories. Performing just like I was, either on the football field or also performing at church. Chapel services on, before the game, during the season, involved in the couple's Bible study with my wife. Life was good. But on February 16th of 1996, I had my first major wake-up call. My son Chase, who was 2.5 at the time, woke up with a fever. He's our only child, our first one. You freak out his parents, take him to the to the pediatrician. He said, not sure what it is, just go home, allow him to, rest. Well, hopefully it's just some virus or bacteria. A couple days later, he's still spiking fevers, rash all over his body. He's having some allergic type reaction, inability to walk. Joints, they weren't swelling at the time, but take him to the hospital. End up spending a week at Medical City in Dallas. Poking and prodding, drawing blood, nothing. Didn't get anything. We were released after that week with what they called a fever of an unknown origin. And I'm there thinking, God, what's this? Why? What's this about? And days begin to pass, weeks, months. Chase's, my son's symptoms continue to stay the same. I remember many times where, his fever would come on. We'd give him his children's Motrin. You can only give 1 dose every 4 hours. Then fever started to go, 103, 104, 105. Now what do? I'll draw a tepid temperature bath. You try and hold a 2.5-year-old, in the bathtub. He's looking up at me. It's like, Daddy, what's the matter with me? Am I going to be okay? And I'm, Mr. I can do it all. I can perform, right? My wife's around the corner. She's crying, tears coming down. And I'm just like, yeah, buddy, it's going to be fine. But inside, my heart, my guts were just getting wrenched. Because here I was, guys. At the time, I was one of the strongest guys in the Cowboys. I could bench 550 pounds. I could squat 750. At 295 pounds, I could run a 4.68 40. Jacoby, mass times velocity, right? Running the walls. And I ran into things for a living, but I couldn't help my son. But at this point, unfortunately, we live in a fallen world where there is sin, there is death, there is unemployment, there are health issues, there's relationship issues. And God just began to work. He had me right where He wanted me. And my wife and I made a commitment to stay together, for this, no matter what, because the statistics show that it's beyond of divorce rates when you're going through that sort of process. But I also made a commitment to God that I'm not going to run from You. And over that time, God began to pour into me. And a lot of this time, guys, I'm flying solo by myself because I didn't want to share with anybody because I'm a guy. I got it all together. I can handle all this stuff by myself. I don't need anybody else to help me with this. But it finally came to the point where God really spoke to me, not an audible voice, but just impressed upon me that we have a large post oak tree in our backyard that God had, said, Chad, I want you to tie your son Chase up to that tree and allow those fans, Eagles fans, Jets fans, Giant fans, Eagle fans to come over and to verbally abuse Chase, to throw stones at him. Would you do that for me? It's like, no, God, that's my job. I'm his father. I'm supposed to be able to fix it. He said, okay, Chad, I'm going to up it. Would you allow them to kill Chase for me? It's like, no, God, again, I'm supposed to do that. God, that's my job. And this is where the light bulb went on. Again, guys, this is one of those moments, aha moments, like I mentioned before, where God finally said, it's like, Chad, in spite of what you think, there is nothing that you can do to earn my love. It is a gift. It is grace. You don't have to perform. You can't perform. I sent my son, Jesus Christ, to come to live in this world a sinless life, but to willingly go upon a cross, endure your sin, everyone's sin here, past, present, and future, upon himself for you, because I love you. And guys, it was like, wow. I've never felt anything like that in my life before. I don't have to perform. I can't perform. But because of that love, that grace that he has for me, my identity was not wrapped around my performance. Now my identity is wrapped around, I am a son of the living God. And because of that identity, I want to do those things. I want to speak. I want to tell people my story. I want to empower men to be who God is calling them to be. Because here's the thing, you guys in this community probably know it better than anybody else. Economic booms or busts with the oil and gas industry, right? It doesn't matter what you do. I've been a fighter pilot. I've been a student. I've been a professional athlete. I'm a businessman. I'm a husband and father. But that's not who you are. That's what you do. Our main purpose for each and every one of us here is to do two things: to worship God and to make his name known. Everything else is how you achieve those two things. If you profess a belief in Jesus Christ, if you confess by your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. You will be saved. But here's the thing too, guys. I talked about identity, individual, but I also talk about that corporate identity. How many of you feel frustrated with the direction that I'm a rhetorical question, you don't have to raise your hands, I'll raise mine. Feel frustrated with the direction that our nation is taking in the last few years? Yeah, okay. Go ahead, raise them up. Yeah. But I share that with you is because in order for any country or any entity, any societal grouping to succeed, it has to have a common foundation. There's a study by Emil Durkheim, a French sociologist that over 100 years ago made a study that he said that when societies or communities don't have a common moral foundation, there's a decrease in happiness and an increase in suicide. That's one of those universal truths. Just look around at our culture today. But for me, guys, I realized that I was flying solo. I was trying to do it all by myself. And that was one of the impetus for starting the ministry that Mark had alluded to, Wingman. Our whole purpose is to encourage men to form transparent, Christ-centered, masculine relationships. We're not a church. We're there to support the church, not to supplant the church. We provide acceptance, affirmation, accountability. Because, as I said, it's so difficult, even when you're going through holy heck in your life, upside down, relationships, health, employment, underemployment, whatever it might be. The world tells us that you're not a man if you reach out and want to expose any of your shortcomings or your weaknesses. That you got to be Rambo, take the world on by yourself. Or for my demographic, you got to be John Wayne or Gary Cooper at high noon, standing in Main Street saying, "Bring it on, world, I can take it." That's as far from the truth as you can get. We were created for relationships. And that's what excites me so much about organizations and what you guys are doing here. Coming together to, again, accept who you are as a man, affirm who you are as a man, but hold each other accountable going forward. I want to do just one exercise, and I'm going to, after lunch here, to make sure you guys get your exercise here, but do one thing to kind of reinforce why it is at times is so difficult for us as men to form relationships, to be able to get with another guy, sit across a round table, typical conversations like this, Wesley, how's it going?
Good.
Good, yeah. How the kids? Good. How's wife? Good. How's work? Good. That's all I need to know, right? But I can look, not Wesley here, but I can look, I've been there where looking in another guy's eyes, not looking into his eyes. I mean, not in that, not going there, but, he's just hurting inside. Because his child just got arrested in Fort Worth, and he's for being in a crack house. His wife wants him to go pull his kid out of the jail, but he knows it's the best place for her, that if she comes out, she's going to end up being dead the next day. What do? So here's what I want us guys to do, and I'll close with this. We can get to the questions. Everybody, stand up. I want you to pair off with one other guy. Just pair off. I'm going to get on stage to do this one. Okay, everybody paired off? Everybody got a partner? If not, raise your hand. We got mirrors, you can look in your mirror at yourself? No. But here's a typical relationship that we have as men. And before I even get there, here's what I'm going to talk about here and show you are three types of relationships that are biblically based. When Jesus sent out the 72, he had 72 disciples that he sent out to go do work. But he also had his 12, the apostles. More intimate, that he taught them. He shared life, spent life, but he also had his three, Peter, James, and John. Intimate, where they saw him being transfigured. They were there, seeing him sweat blood. And those are the types of relationships, guys, that we all have. Those superficial friendships, kind of some more about being in the same church body, but you also have those really tight relationships, so you're truly, your best friends. But here's a typical transition of male relationships. With your partner, go back to back. All right? You see your way, he sees his way. You're not walking together. Low threat. You don't have to share anything. It's just you be you, I be me, right? But there's no cover for one another. You don't see your blind spots. He sees your blind spots. You don't see, your own blind spots, sort of thing, right? Now go shoulder to shoulder. Same direction, facing the same direction. Okay, this is where you start to get a little more intimate. You can look over at the guy, give a slight glance. Hey, this is where you're starting to get engaged. You can start to pull, the plow in the same direction. You can see each other, 180 degrees. You got his right flank or you got his left flank, etc., but you're still not there. Where we all need to strive to be in relationships, you're going to love this, go face to face. Yeah, hey, it's uncomfortable, isn't it? It's very uncomfortable. Now, some of you guys are getting a little too intimate. You're probably over there staring into his eyes. But it's uncomfortable. But look at the position. You can see over his back. He's got your back. And I read this great quote in a devotional the other day, that sin blinds me to me. Sin blinds you to you. In other words, spiritual blindness, you don't know what you don't know unless a truly intimate, somebody that knows you very well can point out those things in a loving manner, as it says in Galatians. But guys, this is where we need to strive to be in our relationships. Typically, we're just back to back, most of them. Occasional few shoulder to shoulder. But each and every one of us need those face-to-face relationships to walk through life, to survive those things. So guys, we'll get to the questions here, but just in review, personally, you're created with one purpose in mind, to worship God and make His name known. But you can't do it solo. You need others to help you complete your God-given, directed mission in life that He's calling each and every one of you personally to accomplish and to achieve. Amen? Amen. Okay, sit down and you can go through those questions.